coffee.
So where are you at, Dan? At home?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I am going to mute everyone but Dan for the moment. So, yes. All right. Dan, you'll have to unmute yourself again there. Welcome, everybody. My name is Lori Amick, and I'm on the board of directors at the Art Museum. And we're excited to have so many people here tonight to listen to Dan. We have Dan on exhibit right now, not Dan actually, but his work on exhibit at the Shook Room. That exhibit will run until February the 7th. The title of it is Inside Outside, and I'm sure Dan will tell you a lot more about that exhibit. We also have numerous videos on our website of Dan talking about that exhibit. So if you don't get enough of him tonight, you can go to our website and learn a little more. You can also visit the Art Museum. We are practicing safe social distancing at the museum. We are open 4 days a week. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and Sundays as well. And we're 1 hour time slots. So you need to reserve your time slot online and show up. We keep a minimum or maximum of 10 people at the museum. So it's a very safe place to visit. So we hope that you come by and see Dan's exhibition. Also on exhibit right now, we have Seeing the Light by Ed Lausch. It's a photography exhibit. It Goes Without Saying by Joe Rohrman, which is a delightful ceramic sculpture exhibit. And we also have Kathleen Remembered in an exhibit in the Eggleston Gallery. Kathleen was a longtime model at the museum, and so she passed away recently. And so we've got a fascinating exhibit of many different artists that drew Kathleen over the years. I want to take a moment to thank our community sponsors. The museum isn't here without sponsorship. So Keystone Architecture, First Source Bank, the Art League, and the Second Century Club are all sponsors for this exhibition. Just a little bit of logistics. We are recording this speech, and it will be on our Facebook page and our website later on. So just be aware of that. And then if you have questions while Dan's talking, you can put those in the chat. If you're familiar with your website thing or your Zoom thing at the lower, put your mouse down along the lower thing and a chat box will come up. So you can put any questions in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring those. When Dan's done, then we will open it up for speaking. I'm trying to make it so that we don't see everybody, but in the meantime, if you go up to your little screen and click on speaker view, it'll make Dan the big important person. So I will be quiet, and it's all you, Dan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lori. And thanks everybody for attending. I hope you drank plenty of coffee and didn't eat a big dinner. So, you can stay awake during this. I just, first of all, want to thank the museum for letting me have the exhibition. It kind of timed out just right. I just kind of finished a series, and they're just in my studio isolating like I am. And so it worked out real well. And just wanted to thank Kendall for all the work he does for the museum. Kendall Smith, he's the director. Michael Crothers, the curator, he always does a bang up job hanging a show and getting it all labeled and looking good. Thanks to Lori for all the behind the scenes work she does, putting the videos together and so forth. And LaDonna and plenty of other people that have done so much with the museum and helping put these shows together. And for those of you who are in the area, that's a great museum. If you haven't been, go. There's constantly changing shows, and it's just a really nice setup there. I've been actually going, I've been thinking about this talk. I realized I was going to the museum back in probably the late 50s, early 60s or so. So it's been in my blood too. Just some quick background for those of you who don't maybe know. Excuse me, I was born and raised in West Lafayette about 100 years ago. I went to West Lafayette High School, graduated, and then I went to Kansas City Art Institute, where I received my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and then came back and did my graduate work in Purdue in painting. And at the same time, I was teaching in technical graphics. And eventually I graduated, I taught, then I left Purdue, and then I went into out in the outside world and did video production and animations, then was heavily involved in graphics with a company, and then ended up back at Purdue in agricultural communications, doing graphics, layout, print, and so forth. And of course, during this whole period, I've been painting, and it was kind of like two different worlds, you know, day job, night job, paint on the weekends, paint at night, and so forth. So, and also currently I escaped Purdue about 3 or 4 years ago, and so I can paint full time. And I'm also on the board of the Indiana Artists Club's statewide organization, currently serving as president. Okay, so in thinking about this talk, you know, I could have just showed the pieces that are in the show and talk about each one, which there isn't a whole lot to talk about. So I thought I'd kind of go into a little bit of my backstory, just what the influences on my art were, and what sort of has driven me to do what I do, and all the influences and so forth. The reason I titled it Inside Outside, I'll explain as I go throughout the talk. First of all, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be, I was inside and I always wanted to be outside. I just wanted to run around in the woods and, you know, play outside and ride my bike down country roads and that kind of thing. So it's kind of always been in my blood. I was involved with scouting and hiking and canoeing and all that good stuff. And so it was very hard to keep me inside, I guess you could say. But then there were always lots of things going on inside. And when you're in the woods, you're inside the woods. You go outside and look at the meadows and the prairies, you're outside the woods, you know. So it's kind of this endless play. And there's some other things that come into play with this. Okay, so anyway, let me just jump right into, I'm gonna do a screen share here and open this up. Okay, and hopefully everybody can see it. And once I get done, like I say, any questions you have, we'll holler at the end, and I'll try to answer anything, and we'll keep moving along. So first of all, where it all started, and I was an only child. My mother was, she enjoyed doing art. That wasn't her job or anything, but she did a lot of handmade lettered signs using speedball lettering tools, which some of you are familiar with, speedball lettering pens. And she had a great book, a couple of speedball books, and I copied everything as a kid. I'd use the lettering guides and learn how to do Old English and script and all this calligraphy. And plus they had a lot of illustrations in there. So I copied everything, and it was kind of fun. You know, my mom was involved with it. And so that was kind of where I somewhat first started. Then the other big influence in my life was John Nagy. I don't know if any of you are hip to that, but he was this cool dude back in the 50s on TV, and I got his book, John Nagy Learned to Draw. And man, I love this thing. It was all the basics of drawing, form and shape and shadows and shading and all that. And he was just really cool. He was on TV, and then I used his book and endlessly. I learned a lot from it. One of his statements, let's see, I got to get this screen out of the way. I like this one statement he wrote. I believe that in the life of everyone, there comes a time when the art spirit is dominant. Hang on, I got to get rid of this, move this screen over. You may have passed it when you were 5 or 7 or 11 years of age, but it will come again several times in your life when you're looking for something outside your practical everyday routine. So I thought that was always cool. Move that back out of the way. So that was a big influence. Okay, now this isn't my drawing. This is some drawing of the Civil War scene. So the reason I bring this up is because there were so many times where I had to, it's like, okay, I got to sit down and read this chapter about the Civil War because we're going to have a quiz on it tomorrow, and I got to get a decent grade. So I'm going to sit here and actually read this chapter. Well, generally what would happen, it'd be like an hour and a half later, and I hadn't read any of the chapter, but I had this little battle scene drawn and cannons and everything else. So, you know, it was, I wasn't big on the reading. I was more on the visual, and a lot of the reports I had to do and things for classes, the teacher would say, well, your writing's a little weak, you know, your grammar's not great or something, but your cover design and the illustrations and the maps and diagrams, I'll give you a better grade because of those. So that was kind of fun. So I realized early that's kind of where my strength was. Then in high school and towards the end of high school, getting into college, you know, everything was exploding. This was 1969, you know, and everything was going psychedelic, the colors, all the design work, everything was just really changing. It was such a crazy time, but visually it was very different. And of course that influenced me. Album covers were so cool and everything, Jimi Hendrix. Then I'm throwing this one goofy thing in this is a rat fink on the right there. I know it's pretty gross. Well, the schools on the other side, for you West Siders, you know what I'm talking about. The schools on the other side of the river always called us river rats. And so we adopted the rat fink, which was done by an illustrator out in California, Big Daddy Roth. He did all this custom car crazy stuff. And so we adopted it. And then, so I did this design about 5,000 times for all sorts of events and dances and the things that banners teams would run through. So anyway, so all that was going on. It was a big influence. But at the same time, I was learning how to do landscape painting stuff. I was taking classes at the museum and some other places. And so it was kind of in there. I was doing watercolors and so forth. So anyway, then I went to Kansas City, 500 miles away in 1969 to go to art school. Woohoo! Pretty crazy time. And it was so cool because the Kansas City Art Institute, I mean, it was all art. Everybody's there for art, as well as there was music. It was kind of like art and music and culture, and then all the crazy stuff that was going on back then, which influenced a lot of things. So my influences when I got there, I mean, I was a pretty naive kid and art-wise too. Well, one thing was right across the street from the Art Institute was the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. And it was this big, heavy duty art museum. And I'd never really been in a big one like that. So, and we could go over there anytime we wanted for free, students. So, you know, I was checking out the art in there and I was seeing classical art and so forth. I was taking tons. We had to take art history, it seemed like every semester for 3 years. Which was looking at slides endlessly and, you know, being tested on it. But, you know, so I saw classical art, I saw impressionist art, some modern art and everything else. Well, the things that started really influencing me, I was eventually, I studied design for a year and then I went into printmaking and drawing. But the biggest thing was the German expressionists. Now I liked, up in the corner there is a Thomas Hart Benton. He lived near Kansas City and I almost got a chance to see him. And all the other influences, but the German expressionists, this woman here, that's a Kirchner. And I really got into the German expression because their colors were bold, they're very expressionistic. I was checking out because I was printmaker, the Japanese wood blocks, the Impressionists and Gauguin, Van Gogh. Then I also got into Kandinsky a lot. It was kind of like a design thing. I mean, he did more painterly type things, but he also did these real intense design things. And that always intrigued me and I really enjoyed it. But the thing that I was attracted to was bold colors. And I think it's affected me ever since, between the age of the psychedelia and then bold colors from the Fauvists and the modernists and so forth. Let's see. Oh, then I had a big moment. I was working for a gallery. We were delivering art around the country. That was fun, to various places. And we did the big trip to New York City. And I got to go to all the museums and it was, you know, totally blew my mind. And anyway, I go in the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, and there was this big Monet painting. And I walked up close and looked at it, and you could see all this scumbling, and it was real thick impasto, and it was just like, whoa, you're standing a couple of feet from it and you're just lost in this world. But then you get back and it was just, there was a bench back here and I sat there, and I think for a little bit I was the only one in the room, and I literally started kind of weeping. I mean, it just blew my mind that a painting could be so powerful. And that was really an interesting point. I mean, it's kind of like at that point, it's like, okay, yeah, art and painting, man, this can really be powerful. So it was a big moment for me. Let's see what page. Okay, then, so I graduated miraculously from art school, played starving artist and all that, but I kept painting. I was doing big abstract work and this, that, and the next thing, as well as plein air painting on the Missouri River and so forth. But then anyway, I ended up back home because I got an assistantship in technical graphics, which was teaching engineering students, and they had a program, a 2-year program at that time. And they taught things like orthographic projection, which is what you're seeing here, top view, front view, architectural rendering. What else did it teach? It was all drafting based. I mean, T-squares, triangles, that kind of thing, which ironically enough, I just used my T-square from back in the day yesterday. And that had a real influence on me, that and teaching drawing. It's the old thing where if you teach it, you tend to learn it even more because you're under the gun. So it influenced my work. And so here's some early stuff, some bad photographs, but like the piece on the left, this is done on masonite. And I did a whole series of these. This is about 6 feet tall. And it's kind of bizarre in that it's basically 2 big pieces. If you see this top chunk to the point here, and then the bottom chunk, which goes around here and around that, those are 2 pieces flat against the wall. And then the white surface of this plane on top, that's the wall. And then the other pieces are just separate pieces. So it's about, 6 separate pieces. So I got into this whole illusion thing, and I was doing that for quite a while in masonite. And then I was also involved with technology and nature, things. We were getting into CAD and all that stuff was happening, computers. But anyway, so I did this whole series of interstate overpasses because I like the structures underneath, and they kind of look like, man-made elements in the natural world and so forth. I did have a friend of mine said, why the hell are you painting those? Who cares about interstate overpasses? And then, I was just, I think it's cool. But and then they went on vacation, and he came back and said, God, every time we were driving along, we'd see a overpass. We'd really check it out. So it kind of changed their perception, which was kind of cool. Then I'll throw this in. It's a real great picture here. The colors aren't quite right. This is at the art museum back in the 80s. This is a piece I did. It's about 18 different pieces assembled together, done on MDO boards, kind of like a thick board, kind of like a plywood. And that was on that back wall in the upstairs of the museum. I don't remember what the show was or anything, but anyway, and then Mr. Groovy guy there. So anyway, let's see what page we're on, page 6. Okay. Okay, now I have a dilemma all the time in my work. I'm always drawn to traditional realism. I get pulled that way a lot of times. I don't know whether it's through training or, that sort of natural thing. Oh, we got to make it look like what it really is, versus trying to do something a little more contemporary, a little more abstract and so forth. So as a little exercise, I did 2 paintings, one direction and one the other. And I kind of think of it too in reference to this whole inside outside, that the piece that's more realistic tends to be more outside my head. I'm looking at what I'm seeing and sort of trying to, I guess you could say, record it or whatever. Whereas the other one's more interpretive, the contemporary, getting looser and abstract, and that becomes more of an inside job, more in my head kind of thing. But I don't know, sounds a little philosophical, but whatever. So most of my painting career is wrestling this issue. Okay, here's a couple of, and I'm skipping through generations of stuff. So, you know, I don't want to drag this out, and I will get to the work that's in the show. The piece on the right, that's a plein air painting from Zionsville Paint Out. Like I say, I've done some plein air. I'm not really, you know, wouldn't call myself a plein air painter. There's tons of people that are really good at it, but it's good to get out. Oh, plein air painting, if you're not familiar, is painting outdoors. So basically you drag your equipment out there and deal with the environment and try to paint a picture. Then this other one on the left, this is the, I did a whole series of pole paintings, I call them, where, okay, being born and raised in and running around in the Indiana landscape, you know, you got fields, edges, roads, tree lines, telephone poles, so forth. So I got into this kind of whole natural plus unnatural, contemporary, shifting around. You know, I think has something to do with my being in graphics. A lot of times if you're doing print graphics, everything's based on an invisible grid. So you're lining things up. So I really enjoyed working with this series. I did those for quite a few years. Here's another piece. These are two canvases, like I think each one's 3 by 4 feet, and I bolted together and just to give it more contemporary feel. And this is where I actually, a couple times, it's like, okay, I'm in Indiana, I need to paint a barn. What the heck, you know? And I don't know. I just like the verticals and the way lines and edges would work together. And again, then when you go out in the, like an Indiana landscape with soybean fields and the hedgerows and things like that, you see some of this. This is a larger piece. These are 3 canvases put together. They're, I think, 3 by 4 feet each one. And now here's where I got into this thing of, and I guess the easiest way is call it impermanence. And it comes from a drawing instructor I had at the Art Institute who would do these crazy, elaborate drawings, but he would constantly be erasing and rebuilding it, erasing and rebuilding, literally tearing half the drawing off, put new paper down, draw over it. And that always, I really dug that. And like this piece, you can't quite see him, but in the first thing I did on the 3 canvas was paint 3 shed front doors. And then once that was done, then I started painting over top of it. And I did that a lot, either abstractly or I would paint an image and then start painting over it and leaving it sort of a hint of it there. I like the sort of history of it, the mystery of it. And then a lot of these are with palette knife. That's where I get the little shapes, and I palette knife the paint on, and I can kind of scrape and reveal colors underneath and so forth. So, oh, okay. Now I'm going down another trail. So the way I work, I tend to work in series, and I'll run with it for a while, and let's say a year or whatever, and then I hit the wall, and I'm either tired of it, bored of it, and I got to try something new. And I really find that refreshing. I always come back to the landscape, but I'm constantly going down these different trails. And generally what happens is I come back to the landscape and I bring something back with me to add to it. So, I don't know. But because of my job during the day, I would work on a computer all day, using Photoshop, using images to do graphics and so forth. I took tons of photos, landscape stuff, and you name it, that I would draw on for my graphics work, but also for my painting. So what I did was, and I thought, well, let's marry the two, because I'd work all day on the computer, and then I'd go work all night in the studio and slinging paint around. So I started building these complex images with my photos, and then I would print them large format and and keep it archival. And then I would paint on top of them. And so at some areas I would leave, others I would blow away, others I'd cover up and so forth. So I did a whole series of these. I've never really shown them. And I was going to buy a large 48-inch printer and all that, but it was like real expensive. And I thought, oh, gee, I'll probably get tired of that. So, and here's another one. This is Patty at a Chicago Cubs game with the vendor back there. And if you see these lines coming down, and you can see some of these weird shapes, those are that's from the ceiling at the Indianapolis airport. And then there's weeds and flowers and all kinds of stuff going on. So I really had fun with these. And someday maybe I'll try them again or something. So again, I go down a bunny trail and then I come back. Then, and some of you remember this probably from maybe the show at the museum, I don't know how long ago that was, 5, 6 years ago or something. But I got into doing these really stylized landscapes and heavy influence by Richard Diebenkorn, his work, and even Matisse and some other people. But again, this is just very stylized. These are large pieces. They're like, I don't know, 6 by 4. Double canvases bolted together. The reason I like doing large work, but I can't figure out a way to transport them half the time. I'm not going to rent a van, so I bolt canvases together. It seems to work okay. Not the most ideal, but then I started doing some of these things where I started marrying the super stylized kind of whatever with the landscape, kind of the land down here, and then up above is the kind of mysterious space, spiritual, whatever world. Okay, then another kind of bunny trail was my aerials. One day I was flying into the Indianapolis airport, and as we were landing, we're going over some fields. I took some pictures outside the window, kind of aerial like. And so I did some paintings, and then I started checking out Google Earth and started zooming around on it. So I used some of that as a sort of a baseline. And so started doing these Midwest aerials, because I had done a bunch of them back when I was in Kansas City, these abstract aerials of Midwestern fields and stuff. And so I was sort of revisiting it. And I actually, at one point too, it was pretty inexpensive. I was able to rent a student and a plane over at Purdue, a little Piper Cub, and we flew up one beautiful early evening, and I opened the window and just say, okay, fly over the river, fly over there, and shot like 600 photos. And it was awesome. It was a beautiful night too. So I ran with a bunch of aerials and stuff for a while, and again, then hit the wall and moved on. I also like to do still lifes and so forth, objects and things. And again, it sort of reflects some of my graphics background and other artists, whether it's Matisse or Diebenkorn or Wolf Kahn or something. The piece on the left, actually, the Indiana State Museum purchased it for their collection. Some other things that I trail off on, the kind of the abstract and whatnot. Again, to me, when you're doing a landscape, it's a little bit more outside. When I'm doing the abstracts, it's a little bit more inside. And I kind of debated whether I should throw this in there, but I thought, what the heck? This is a painting I did. And these are the 3 photographs I assembled to use as my base. And they've got a story, and I don't know, I don't feel comfortable telling the story. I sort of understand it. It was more intuitive. The flowers were from my dad's funeral. He died, and some other things going on. So anyway, here's the beginning of the painting, 3 large canvases, again, put together. I tend to work with a toned red canvas and then get the drawing kind of roughed in, nothing too exciting. And then a painting constantly evolves. There's many artists that I know that when they start a painting, they pretty much know exactly how it's going to end. Me, I don't have a clue. I mean, generally speaking. So it's just the way I work. Here's the next stage, filling in colors and blocking in and so forth. And then then I hit this stage. And then I said, oh man, I don't know, this just isn't cutting it. I just didn't like it. So I put it away, and I put it away for about 6 or 7 years. And it was always back there in the back of the stack, kind of talking to me. So I pulled it out one day and a couple of years ago and attacked it. Which sometimes my attitude is like, oh, I'm not going to let a painting beat me. Come on, got to hang in there. But anyway, so I attacked it, and I did thin layers over top, changing things, just trying to make a radical move and see what happens. Eliminated some of the objects and stuff. Anyway, here's the final result. And it was up at a show in South Shore recently. Anyway, but a different kind of piece, not exactly normally the way I work, but who knows, maybe I'll do another one like that. Okay. 13, all right. Then also I like to do plein air painting. I'm not that good at it. There's a lot of really good plein air painters. I work in either oils, which is, those of you who've done it, it's a pain. You drag all your equipment out there and you're against the elements and so forth. But I like using watercolor too, because it's very immediate. I go out with a friend of mine, Terry Lacey, a lot, and some other people. And the top left, that's Prophetstown. This is a nature preserve out on River Road. And then an interesting thing, like these little trees over here, well, I'll tell you in a minute. Most of these are niches properties. This one, the pine trees, that's at Crow's Grove. It has these beautiful pines, so forth. And, working loose, working tighter, whatever. Well, the funny thing was, one February 28th, suddenly it was a beautiful warm day, and my friend Terry Lacey and I said, let's go paint. So we went to a niches property and just sat up on this hill. It was beautiful, looking down through the trees to the Tippecanoe River. Well, doing these little silly watercolors that really didn't amount to much opened up almost 2 years worth of work, because from that I got heavily involved in the niches properties and through the trees kind of thing, and so forth. So what happened was, then my friends Terry Lacey, Rena Brower, and Alan McConnell, the other two are painters. Alan's a large format photographer. We started having exhibitions throughout north central Indiana, had one at the museum, and to raise, obviously awareness for us, but to raise awareness for Niches Land Trust. It's an awesome place, and there's some great properties to hike around on and stuff. So if you're not hip to them, check them out if you're down the area. Okay, step-by-step kind of thing. People are generally seem to be interested in how do you work and whatnot. Most of the time, a lot of times, I will start with a white canvas, but pretty rare. Generally, I'll do an acrylic underpainting, whether it's a solid color, and I tend to like red. I've done it with other colors, or sometimes I'll do literally just a complete abstract, crazy, multicolored thing. Then I might flip the canvas upside down or something and then start a piece on that, because then you get these interesting colors coming through sometimes, or accidents that happen. And you can always paint, they call it fat over lean. You can always do acrylic underpainting and then oil on top. So this would be day one on the left, the red. Start putting in strokes and stuff. This is still day one, and start filling it in a little bit more. And I think this was probably still day one or maybe two. And then by the time I'm done, I started working into it with palette knife, brush work, whatnot. So that's how I tend to work. And I do constantly am sketching and drawing. I feel naked if I don't have a pen and a little piece of paper with me. So I just constantly am doing it. I don't know, it's just a way of thinking, slightly entertainment and kind of meditative. And it gives me ideas, because I can go back through some of these and go, oh, I think I'm going to try to do a painting of that. Here's a little shot of my studio. part of it. And, you know, I always like to brag about my fancy canvas, or excuse me, my fancy easel. I mean, it's 2x4s with a piece of plywood nailed to it. I mean, that's pretty, it wasn't very expensive. And the materials I use, some artists like to know what you know, I use basically Winsor Newton oils, not totally, but mostly. I'm familiar with them. I don't have to think about it so much. I like the quality. I use palette knives a lot, different ones for different means. You can scratch, you can trowel it on, you can do all sorts of things with them. Of course, brushes or combinations thereof. And then I use as medium liquid original from Winsor Newton. Greatest stuff ever invented. The nicest thing about it, when I mix it with my paints and paint, generally speaking, by the next day, it's dry enough that I can work again. So that's one thing I like about it. Speeds up the drying. And I like what it does with the paint itself. Okay, finally, we'll get to what's in the show. Okay, there's 13 pieces in the show. They're all 3 by 3 feet, except for one, which is 4 by 5 or something like that. But this was started back in the summer of 2019. What year is it now? I can't remember now. Summer 2019, I was fortunate enough to be given a residency in Paducah, Kentucky by Kay and Alonzo Davis. They have a residency program down there. And basically what it is that for 2 weeks, I had a apartment and an attached studio. And, you know, I was kind of away from everybody and off the grid. And so I was able to start this body of work, and it was a real productive time. I mean, I was basically, I'd get up, make breakfast, paint, ride my bike, eat lunch, paint, you know. So this piece, a lot of these are niches properties, or that was the original inspiration. This is the one on the left is Doing It Together. That's from Wabash Bottoms. It's a dry creek bed that leads back to the Wabash River. It's really one of my favorite places. Very simple, but it's cool. And there's always something different going on. The other piece is Crow's Grove Overlook. It's from a niches property called Crow's Grove, and there's a creek that runs through it and a rock formation ledge, and it's real peaceful and very intimate, small and intimate. So zoom in on those, I guess. Okay, then like these, and this is a reoccurring theme, and I'm not sure about it, but this is kind of, again, that inside outside, you know, you're in the woods and stuff, but I also like it when you're out in the big expanse. And then I tend to like, and maybe because I've seen it so many times, but I like the idea you're standing there and you're like, okay, what's going on in those trees over there? I want to go check it out. There's always something cool in there. Maybe there's a nice trail or some animals, I don't know. But then there's this sort of wall in front of you, and like, okay, how am I going to get back there? Do I break through the wall? Do I go around and see what I can find? And I don't know, maybe that's getting too philosophical, but it's also very, very graphic, you know, boom, boom, boom. And then of course the sky and what goes on with the sky. And I like throwing these square elements in, or hints of curves and things like that. And I like the shift kind of from the pole paintings, kind of a different time frame, time of day, different reality, whatnot. And like this surface, I was really laying it on, scraping it off, laying it on, scratching through it. And so we're trying to get a little more expressionistic or expressive. Then this piece, again, okay, one thing I've been fascinated by, like when you're in the woods walking down a trail or something, you know, you look off the trail. I've told a lot of you this before, but anyway, you look off the trail and there's just so much going on. You know, it's just packed with information, and it's always been scary to kind of think of, geez, how can I paint that or whatnot? And I think that's why I got into, back when I showed you those things I did with prints and paintings, because it was easier to just build a complex image up with a print. So anyway, I tried to do it with paint, and really kind of enjoyed it. It's a bit of a challenge. Sometimes like you get in, you get brush strokes, you get solid areas, the underpainting showing through. The reason sometimes you underpaint with a color, if you show those flecks of red throughout the painting, it kind of helps unify the color. And then this, like, what's the name of it? Summer Celebration. To me, it's always like everything, these things they're out there celebrating the fact that they got all this stuff going on. I don't know, and especially you hit a point in the summer where it's everything's happening, everything's exploding. And I just really like that. And all working together. And again, the thing that I've said before, that to me, it represents total chaos, but total harmony. I mean, it's all working, even though it, one plant struggling to get more to the sun than the other plant or whatnot, but yet it's all working. And I think about this all the time when I'm out in nature too, sitting by a stream or just off the trail, looking at this stuff. It's like, gee, I'm sitting here looking at this, then I'm going to go back to my goofy world with technology and all the issues and politics and news and all the crap. And, but meanwhile, this is all going on out there. And I think I brought up in one of the interviews, I always imagine sometimes when I was a kid, you'd see those, I think it was Looney Tunes or something, where they did the old cartoons where there would be parties going on in some woods, with all the flowers, with a trumpet, playing trumpets, and a nightclub, and all the bugs are dancing and stuff. And I kind of always imagine that. I don't know, kind of silly, but this piece was a little bit different. Ecological shindig. I don't know, I got into using the white around a lot of the edges and so forth, and just trying a different thing. Anyway. Okay, here's another step-by-step. Okay, this is the start of the painting. This is the one of Martell Forest. Started with a red canvas and then just attack it with various colors. This step 2 might even be the same day, I don't know. Start building in some of the colors. Then the next step, and here I tried to show, okay, the center part is the finished piece, but here's step 3 or something where I'm starting to, get some more detail and so forth. So the changeover and then the final piece. And this is at Martell Forest. It's the Purdue Forestry Center where they do research and so forth. And if you've never been there, it's a great place to go. It's right out South River Road, out near the Granville Bridge, sort of, and massive acreage. They got ponds, doing a lot of tree plantings. And the thing that I'm always intrigued, because it's so organized, because it's a forestry center, so a lot of the trees are lined up or in a grid or something, but yet you got the natural plants and things kind of doing their own thing. So, and this is called Through the Layers. It's just, layers and layers and layers. And I think there's a lot of that out in the landscape where you've got the foreground, midground, distance, and just different worlds. Okay, this piece is the larger piece. Black Rock Get Together. It's from Black Rock, which is another Niche's property, and it's really cool because it's got an overlook over the Wabash, and then you can crawl down behind these rocks, and there's vines and all kinds of stuff going on. Kind of a different piece for me, but I was getting into the vines and things. Down the trail, pretty straightforward. I mean, it's a trail piece and so forth. Again, blocking in, adding details, changing, moving, eliminating things, trying to get the light right and the shadows and so forth. Always the trick. This was a favorite of mine in the show, that because it's so much looser and not quite as detailed. And I was I really like Joan Mitchell. She was an abstract expressionist back in the day. And I like some of her work. It's just very expressive and loose and natural. And anyway, um, so, and again, I think on this one I recorded, I think there's 487,296 strokes in it. Just kidding. It does get a little like crazy after a while. It's like, oh, gee, when do I quit? Or, how much more should I add and whatnot. Anyway, it's kind of fun. I mean, it almost becomes, you get sort of hypnotized by it. And the other thing about the inside outside, it's always so crazy. You go out in the woods, you check it out, maybe you take some photographs, and then you come inside and do this painting. And usually while I'm doing it, I'm almost sometimes zoning out and thinking, oh yeah, I'm out, especially when it's the dead of winter or something, and I'm working on a piece like this. It's like, oh, I'm off in the woods and it's a nice pretty day, it's warm, do. And then you look outside and it's 5 below. Okay, so those are the pieces in the show. There's 13 of them. And they're all 3x3 except for the one. Now, I just had to show this, I couldn't resist. Now I'm going a completely different direction. And once again, I've changed gears. And I'm going abstract again and more geometrics and so forth. And I'm pulling this technique that Atosa just had a show there. She does the cold wax work and so forth. And again, it sparked me again because I did some cold wax painting some years ago, a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went back to landscape. Anyway, so I'm revisiting it, and I'll explain it in a minute. So these are oil paint, cold wax, and oil pastel. And I call them scrape paintings or scratch paintings because, and I'll show this. This is a step-by-step in general of what happens. So first I take a canvas, underpaint in acrylic, and again, not caring too much about edges and whatnot, just getting some color going, shapes and things like that. Then the next step is I take oil sticks, which are, I use Winsor Newton oil sticks. They're horrible to use. They're really messy. They dry and you have to cut them, but they're real fat. They're like cigars, basically oil paint and wax in a stick form. They also have oil pastels, which work a little easier. Anyway, so then on top of that acrylic painting, I'll draw all these lines and shapes and color in areas, and it's kind of thick and it doesn't dry. Then the same day, I will take oil paint and mix it with cold wax, which is a jar of basically this paste of wax. And I'll mix the cold wax with the paint and then carefully palette knife it on over top that quote drawing stage. And generally, and I use a little bit of liquid. Vary the amounts, you get different results. Vary the amounts of all the things, paint, cold wax, and liquid. Then the unfortunate thing, then pretty much the very next day, because it starts drying, depending on how much liquid I use, but it starts drying. Then what I do is I take a palette knife and spend a good part of the day scraping the painting, scraping off the paint. And so what happens is you get where that oil stick was, like the red lines here, those, it's easier to scrape that off. Where there is an oil stick, it tends to not scrape as easy. And so I scrape it all down, scratch it, scar it, and everything else. And then usually I come over it with maybe brush, more palette knife, more colors, change some things, maybe more cold wax. So I'm sort of experimenting a lot. And this is the latest piece. It's 3x4 feet. And what it is, I was doing a bunch of experiments with this stuff. So I had these 12x16-inch canvases. So I was recording what I was doing just because I can't remember what I did half the time. It's like, how did I do that? And so I was trying different amounts of cold wax, oil, no cold wax, whatever. So I had these canvases laying around. So I did 2 more. and then I assembled them into a grid and then glued them to a wood panel like canvas thing. And then I started painting on top of them and trying to unify it and mess with it. And so I like the grid, the graphic grid, and it's got kind of an organizational thing, but yet it's kind of chaos. And again, I think I've gone inside my head this time instead of outside, but so that's where I'm headed right now. And I'll do these for a while, and then I'll probably hit the wall. Then I'll go back or spring will come and I'll go outside and plein air paint with my friends. And then I'll do landscapes again and find something new. So anywho, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So thank you for listening to my talk, and open it up for questions or whatever. Or if you don't have any questions.
I think we're all just mesmerized. It's so fascinating, Dan. I have a question. I loved that shot of all your sketches. It just was so exciting. Have you ever considered doing an exhibit of just your sketches?
I've thought about, Lubin knows, she's seen them. People have been in my studios. I've got boxes of notebooks filled. Yeah, I've thought about it. It'd be kind of interesting. Just, I don't know. The thing is, I pull them out periodically and lay them out, a lot of them out on the table, or go through the notebooks and start putting tabs on them, because it's like, oh, I want to try that piece. I forgot about that. So, yeah.
Hey,
Anybody
Dan.
else have any questions?
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
This is your Uncle John.
Hey, Uncle John, how you doing? How's California?
Wow. The paintings look pretty good, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
I couldn't figure out how to get my photo on the screen but it's probably just as well.
You're there.
Good seeing you.
Huh?
Good seeing you.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see
where?
your handsome face.
Where
Well,
am I? Tell me where I am.
Well, you're right below Dan. You're below your nephew.
Oh, there I am. Oh,
Okay.
ugly as ever.
yeah,
Is that you, Patty?
he's there somewhere.
Oh, well, Dan, I just wanted to tell you, wow, that was some lecture. A little long, but it was good.
Yeah,
Remember, brevity is the soul of wit.
I was trying.
Okay. Nice going,
Hey,
Dan.
John.
Oh, hey, Dan,
Yes.
you know me.
Where are you?
That's LaDonna.
Oh, okay. See.
You see me? Am I dark?
You're dark a little bit.
There's so many images.
Okay, let me move closer to the
There you
light.
go.
I'm
Oh, I'll just
excited
have
to
That's
say
better.
we
Oh,
have,
Wait.
while LaDonna's wandering around, I'm excited to say we've got over 40 people online here through Zoom, and we've got a bunch of people online on Facebook. So Dan, you're really popular. I think if we've had a lot of people show up to listen to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What a guy.
Okay,
There's LaDonna.
all right, so am I on? You see me?
Yes.
Gallery.
Yep.
All right, well, so I called Dan because there was this man that said, okay, he called, he said, LaDonna, we were in the art museum a couple of weeks ago, and my wife fell in love with one of your paintings, and I want to buy it for her for Christmas. And we found the painting, but
Good.
he's
Well,
like,
thanks for taking care of that. Appreciate it.
I know, it was so much fun.
I got a question from Monica. How you doing, Monica Casanova? You mentioned Terry
I'm
Lacey.
good, Dan. I said, I'm good. I'm so
Oh, yeah.
happy to see
You asked how important is it
See
to
you.
have these relationships for your work? it's very important to have other artists' feedback. There's quite a few of them here that I work with, that we share each other's art and talk about each other's art. And it's nice because some of the people, I mean, they can be critical, and that's what I want. I want feedback. It's nice to hear, oh, it's really beautiful, and everything else. But and I also like to know how a piece strikes somebody. And I've talked to other artists, they sort of run into the same thing where you think, oh God, this piece is just gorgeous. People are going to eat this up. And then everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, that's all right. And then this other piece that you think, well, I was going to stick this in the closet. And then sure enough, wow, that's the one that wins an award or something. So you never know. And plus the relationship, like my friends, and I can't see everybody here that I go painting with, that especially plein air painting, which is a good excuse to go hang out in the woods and have lunch.
Yeah, I saw Terry Lacey hanging out somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we've done a lot of painting together, and Luba and who
Come on,
else?
man.
Anyway, so
Yeah, Dan, can you hear me okay?
yeah,
Yeah, I thought your presentation was great.
thanks.
I really like the fact that you focused on your, personal viewpoint and little things that would come in that would influence you to do something that didn't necessarily have a goal in the end, but it allowed you to explore the direction you wanted to go without worrying about it. It's nice.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a crazy journey, and it's been kind of fun putting this together. That, of course, I was going in the Wayback Machine, and it's kind of funny, like, oh, those are the influences. I kind of forgot about that, and I'm still doing that stuff. Here it is 30 years later, whatever. And so,
Hey, Dan, it's your Uncle
Yes.
John again.
Yes, Uncle John.
I have one of your paintings that I bought from you years and years ago.
Cool.
I think I paid you $25 for it.
You overpaid.
What's it worth now?
I think $27.50.
Oh, that's a deal. I want to say I'm so proud of you, Dan.
Oh, thanks, Uncle John.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I did have a comment on Facebook from Sue Carr, who said she's going to revisit the exhibit. So I think that after listening to what you have to say, I think you get a lot of different perspectives. So if you've been there already, please go back again, and you can reserve your tickets free online at the website.
Yes. Yeah. And like I say, it's a great museum too. It's a really nice place. And
Hey, Dan, while we were there the other day, this is Judy.
yeah.
There were two young women, and one spent the whole time explaining to the other one all of your plants as indigenous to the area. And I was like, look at the strokes. And they were just studying the plants and picking out this and that. And it was, as you say, you could look at three people could look at it and we all see different things. But
Yeah.
I was like, look at those juicy strokes. How are you just seeing the plants? But I guess that was its own reward for them.
Yeah.
And then a couple of them, did you mean to have a focal point? I'm a representationalist,
Right.
so I'm going to go to the
Well,
boring thing. But in that Crow's Grove, is that one that I like so well?
Yeah.
Did you mean for that gorgeous blue and purple and everybody to fight for our attention in that one area where you have almost it's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Thanks. Well, and that's one thing that I don't want to sound too silly, but probably back from my hippie days or something. I always wanted to be a rule breaker. And, there's always this thing about center of attention. There's a lot of art rules out there that generally you need to learn and understand how they work so that then you can break the rules.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you're successful and sometimes it's not. Like some of those pieces, there isn't a focal point.
Oh, no, I know that.
Center of interest. And I think that's because, like, when I'm out there looking at this stuff out in the woods or something, first of all, everything's a center of interest and nothing's a center of interest in a way. Now, if you're out in looking out across a field and there's a red barn sticking up out there. Well, that's probably going to grab your attention, and then the perspective going to it or something. But then when you get into these other things where it's just sort of a chaos and so forth, that's kind of the thing of no center of interest. So, and it's like the square format. I don't know why I'm so attracted to square formats. They're tricky to use, I think,
Yeah, they are.
positionally. But there's something structural and solid about it. I don't know. Vertical pieces, I like those because they have an uplift and, you know, strength, and like a tree or something. Horizontal or quieter, more the horizon line kind of thing. So, but I like square formats, and it really started years ago. For some reason, I started painting on linoleum squares, 1 foot linoleum squares. They're
God.
perfect squares and they're real hard, so I could really work them over. They're kind of hard to frame and stuff, but they're
Can I
little,
stick a, can I stick a comment? It's the graphic grid.
yeah.
The square, it's part of the graphic grid. It's part of your DNA. It's your bone structure. It's the grid. The grid. But anyway, I
Thanks,
wanted to,
Catherine. And those of you
I
who don't
wanted to
know,
also
Catherine,
say
she's a fine artist too, awfully fine artist. And there's a lot of friends of
represent-
mine artists here.
well-
Judy Crawford, who was talking earlier, she does some amazing stuff.
anyway, representational I am, but I wanted to comment also about the no focal point, because out in nature, there's a lot of rhythm to the landscape. And that's one of the things that those pieces are about. Your pieces is that it's really the rhythm of nature. In a sense, there is no focal point because it's an ongoing rhythm that marches right across the field or where, whatever.
Well, I see your
you know.
point, but I think that was what attracted me to the one, was that Dan did seem to have a definite area where the color was extra rich and extra fighting each other, and it just takes your breath away. It just seems to be there for that reason, to pull
Right,
you
and
into that.
I really love his brushwork.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure so much about this cold wax, but
Coming from you, who you have very good brushwork controlled and immediate. And the other thing about some of these pieces too, I'm really into, I like all kinds of music, but some of the stuff I'll listen to, like Pharoah Sanders or some Indian music or something, and it's kind of jazz, you know, whatever, and free flowing. So I kind of like that aspect of it.
Well, we've an hour and 5 minutes has just flown by. This has been fabulous. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for everybody to come tonight. And, you know, it's a great way to stay safe and still get our art fix. If you're not members of the Art Museum, or if you're not signed up for our newsletter, please do that, because we have other programs coming up, other Zoom programs. And I think through this long, cold winter we're going to have, we'll continue to try to provide opportunities for us to at least connect with people, if nothing else, virtually. So Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for sharing your art. Take your opportunity to go in and see the exhibit. Again, we have it reserved so that it's a minimal number of people at a time. So we're trying to make it as safe as possible.
The lighting in that gallery is exquisite.
It is.
Just
It is.
so subtle, and you feel like you're the only person looking at each one. It's beautiful lighting.
And our curator does a fabulous job of
Mhm.
lighting the work and presenting the work. I did have the chance, I was in there all by myself, and just to stand in the middle of the room and just take a slow turn all the way around and
Nice.
let Dan take me to wherever he wanted me to go. It was quite beautiful. So
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks you all for attending and listening to my blathering, and good to see a lot of you people I haven't seen for a while, and out of towners and California and Uncle John and Massachusetts and everywhere else. So good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. It was
Wonderful.
good.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dan.
Stay safe, stay sane.
Bye-bye.